It's the show where Hawaii's newsmakers come to talk and to take your questions live. From the nation's capital to Honolulu Hale, from the state legislature to the fifth floor. We bring the experts to you and ask them what you want to know. Spotlight Hawaii with Yanji Denise and Ryan Pelesuji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.
Happy Aloha Friday. Thanks so much for joining us here on Spotlight Hawaii on the Friday before Christmas. Hope you all have your Christmas shopping done. We know that some of you are still at work, and that includes Ryan, our guest today, who is working very hard for the education of our children here in Hawaii.
That's right. This morning we are spotlighting our public schools, and joining us is State Superintendent Keith Hayashi. Good morning, sir. Thanks for joining us on this Christmas Eve.
Good morning. Good morning, Yuji. Good morning, Ryan.
Let's start off by talking about this day. There have been a number of articles that were actually in the newspaper a few days ago concerning some confusion. Of course, Governor Green giving 2 extended administrative days to state workers and teachers. Were left wondering if they are included in this and how the Department of Education as a whole is included within this 2 days. Can you tell us or give us any clarity on where things stand right now with the decision by Governor Green to give state workers these 2 days off?
Sure. Ryan, it's very thoughtful, first off, a very thoughtful gesture of Governor Green. Many of our employees, I know, appreciate having today off and next Friday off to be with their families and their loved ones, to celebrate the holidays. And as the governor also mentioned, taking the time to also to support local business, during those 2 days. And it's the intent of the administrative leave, I think, to allow our employees whose normal work day include today, December 23rd, and next Friday, December 30th, to have time off. Many of our school level employees, including our hardworking teachers, already have these 2 days off because it falls during the winter break when school's not in session. In the past years, leave wasn't extended to teachers and other employees who are not scheduled to work during winter break. And similarly, with the latest granting of the administrative leave by the governor, employees whose schedules already include time off on these days, aren't eligible for admin leave. We appreciate definitely and wholeheartedly the dedication of our committed teachers, but we also have vice principals, educational assistants, cafeteria managers, security attendants, health aides, and others who are also off during the winter break. That's more than 16,500 employees in total. And so to bring clarity to it, it is an opportunity, thanks to the governor, for the employees who were working today to have the time off, to spend time with family and friends, and again, support local business. And for our hardworking teachers and others who had already have that time off during today, to enjoy it with family and friends. But that admin leave would not apply to those employees who are already off.
Have you heard any pushback or disappointment on behalf of teachers? I'd imagine that when they hear they get an extra day, people are excited, and then to find out that they don't qualify, nobody's happy about that.
Well, I'm sure, there may be individuals who are, disappointed. I think it's important, for all of us to, to take a look at, the intent of the leave. And it was, I believe, to give those individuals and those employees who are working today time off to be with their families. And so, and they are, and so I think that's a great thing, that they're able to do that. So that's thanks to the governor for giving them that opportunity.
We are, of course, entering December and entering January, closing out this first half of the school year. And this is really the first school cycle for you as superintendent that hasn't been restricted all that much with COVID-19 regulations and rules. How have things gone in this first half of the school year, and your overall assessment with how schools are doing as we live a life outside of what the norm was during COVID?
Ryan, I think our teachers are working really hard in the schools with the rest of the school staff and our employees. I think prioritizing in-person learning really allowed our schools to implement those data-driven strategies that we need in school and in the classrooms to support and accelerate student learning. In visiting schools last year, I was able to visit about 85 schools. I'm hoping to do the same this year. And that's probably one of the best parts of this job, is to be able to get out to the schools, to talk to teachers, to principals and students, and really find out how things are going. Looking at the kinds of interventions that we're putting in place, tutoring, how teachers are working together. I was out at Maili Elementary and was able to see how those sixth grade teachers there really taking a look at student data, looking at their lessons, doing a lesson study, working together with their students and collaborating amongst the teachers in sixth grade to implement their lesson, to do a reflection, and then again leveraging the data, going back again and improving on what was taught and the skills and strategies that they're using in that classroom. And that's what it's about. It's about all of us, whether it's in the department or whether it's in schools or down to individual grade levels, teachers getting together, looking at the data, leveraging what they know, implementing strategies in classes to help accelerate student learning and move them forward. When we look at the academics, but it's also socio-emotional supports and our students, getting them in school because they need to be there. And I think when I was out in Waianae Complex, also I visited Waianae Intermediate School, and their after-school program at Waianae Intermediate in partnership with After School All-Stars was wonderful. I talked to students who are there after school. They were engaged in athletics, intramural, as well as I think culinary and art. Schools are doing a number of things outside of the school day to ensure that we can keep our kids connected, that they're able to network and to build friendship with other students on campus in a fun environment, and at the same time provide some kind of academic support in terms of tutoring or other forms of academic support for students after school. So I think we're at a good place. Just this first semester coming back, definitely, we still have a lot of work to do. When I think about the results that from our annual Strive High data, as well as data from our nation's report card, the NAEP assessment, the National Assessment of Educational Progress. Our student success, our indicators are on a positive trajectory amid the across the board, the national declines. But in Hawaii, our fourth graders have held steady, performing above national averages in reading and math. Our eighth graders performed at the national level for the first time in reading and slightly below the national average in math. These gains speak to the resilience of our students, the dedication of our educators, and the partnerships, that we form and continue to move forward with parents and community. The social emotional aspects also connected to this. Schools have implemented what we call the Hawaii multi-tiered system of support, which supports students' physical, academic, socio-emotional, and behavioral needs. So it's a total wraparound services: academic, socio-emotional supports, leveraging data, looking at our 4 statewide strategies, and moving our schools forward together. I think it is really important. So definitely, though, we realize that we have a lot of work to do, but as a result of this first semester, the data that we see is very promising. Our trajectory is is positive, and we're looking for continued work and improvements throughout our schools in Hawaii.
Well, let me ask you about, you shared the fourth grade and the eighth grade results. Tell us where you see the biggest sort of learning loss. Where are the areas you think are of most concern and that you are focusing the academic resources when you look at kids, and we had such a wide array of experiences. Some students really did well with online learning, others, sort of disappeared and dropped off. Where do you see the biggest gaps and where are you focusing the resources most?
Right. Our NAEP, our NAEP results show that amid the national declines in reading and math scores, our fourth graders held steady, as I shared, above the national average. Our eighth graders, for the first time, did well in reading, but need support in math. And so what we're looking at is really continuing those efforts in the elementary school, but building on our middle school and our middle school efforts. I think what we've done is we've connected with the Association of Middle Level Educators. And so all of our teachers, school principals and administrators all have membership now to AMLE and the resources that the Association of Middle Level Ed can provide. We are definitely focusing on those kinds of opportunities and academic supports for our students in the middle schools. And building on the successes that schools currently have implemented. We're also finding that, what's really important in middle level, in all levels, but especially in middle level ed, when students are going through changes, not just transitioning from elementary to middle, but also, physical changes, and socio-emotional changes. And so for our educators to continue to be updated on the current trends and research in our middle level students, and the importance of continue to build relationships and trust with our students so that we can help to facilitate their growth through those very critical middle level years. I think across the board, one of the things that that I'm really happy about is that we're seeing students returning to school, and more students are in school compared to last year. And again, that's a tribute to the work that the schools are doing.
Well,
but middle level education and is definitely an area that we're focusing on.
Well, I want to ask a little bit about some of the things that have, transpired during the pandemic, and that was virtual learning, something that the department had to stand up fairly quickly. What is the status about how that is now going to be integrated into everyday learning moving forward, say for those who don't have access or can't get to campus, or those who are sick, because we do know that COVID is still out there and requires some children to have to stay away from the classroom for some time. How has that been integrated, and how is that going overall for the rollout as a state as a whole to implement a virtual learning experience?
So in regards to virtual learning, the state did stand up our virtual learning system within the department for those schools and students that needed that. I believe we're down at the statewide group that we're supporting kids. I think we're down to about 200 or 250 students now that are in that statewide virtual learning program. Schools and complex areas still have the opportunity to offer virtual learning supports within their respective school and complex areas. We do see those numbers down though. Students are returning to in-person, which is a really good thing. If there are situations where a student needs to, whether it's quarantine or whatever, as a result of anything, we do have those supports and those systems in place that for computers and Wi-Fi access for our students who need them, so that we can continue the instructional supports for our students if, for example, they're not able to be in school for a limited period of time. Our schools have worked really hard in transitioning students back. The virtual learning, in-person learning, has shown that that is very important for our students to be in school, not just for the academics, but for the socio-emotional supports, being with their friends, their peers, counseling services, those things are all a very important part of the total educational experiences for students. So while we that's important, we do have, if we need to, have supports ready for students that are on currently on virtual learning.
You mentioned social emotional several times now, and I'm interested, speaking anecdotally to educators, that I've talked to, they've all said that they see a lot of behavior issues, especially with the elementary school set, just because there are things that you learn by being around others, by, sitting at a cafeteria or sitting on a bus with other children, and that those kids have sort of missed that. Speaking with a fourth grade teacher recently, she said, well, my kids basically behave like second graders, just on a social emotional level, that they can make up the academics. You can teach these kids how to read and how to do math, but those interpersonal relationships and how to relate to others, that's something that's a little bit more challenging. How are you, dealing with those issues? And what have you heard from educators about some of those challenges right now?
What you've heard from that fourth grade teacher, Yunji, it is also what I've been hearing also from teachers and administrators. Generally, students are experiencing some kind of behavioral adjustment issues. When we think about it, though, as a result of the pandemic, the students were out from school for over a year, and we anticipated in the department that those would be challenges that we would be facing. I think what's the good thing is that we have supports in place. I had mentioned earlier the Hawaii multi-tiered system of support, and though that system is how we are able to identify students' needs and challenges, and then work together collectively within the school to help deliver on services and wraparound services for the kind of supports that students need on an individual basis. In elementary school, I've also heard from middle schools, and high school principals that especially in the beginning of the school year, there were more so the kinds of challenges that you shared behaviorally. But what I've also heard is that as the semester progressed, things have gotten better. Not to say that we still don't have areas that we need to improve in, most definitely, because those challenges still do exist. And but we're doing our best to work with students, to work with families, to be sure that we can address those needs.
Another issue that you've had to address is just the overall demand for teachers here in the state of Hawaii. It is and has been an ongoing problem for anyone in your position to have to make sure that the roles of teachers are not only filled, but finding the right qualified teachers and those who would like to continue on and make a career here in Hawaii. What can you tell us about the update on teacher vacancies, where it stands right now, and what the department is doing to recruit more teachers into the workforce?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the teacher vacancy needs and the workforce need definitely is something that we're feeling. I think it's also across the nation. There is a need for teachers, and not just teachers, but multiple areas. I think that schools across the country are dealing with. For us, I'm very proud of our Human Resources Department, the Office of Talent Management. They've been working extremely hard, thinking outside the box to see what other kinds of strategies that we can put in place, to attract teachers and also to retain them. So our fill rate has been relatively stable. As of December 1st, the department had a total of 737 teacher vacancies. Of that number, 47 are special education vacancies. That amounts to about 6%, I think, of our teacher positions vacant. But what's more important, I think, is that 90% are filled. Are you still? I still have you, right?
We're still here. Yes.
I thought I lost you for a minute there. So anyway, I think I was talking about our teacher vacancies, and so the 94% of our vacancies are filled, which we're in a positive way moving forward. Definitely, we still have work to do though. the department, with the support of the board and on our legislators, continue to address teacher recruitment and retention in a number of ways. We're working to modernize our efforts on our recruitment website to make it easier for individuals to apply to the department. Data shows that the majority of the applicants are applying for jobs on their phones, currently with technology, and our current system is not mobile ready or mobile friendly. It also our new system then will also allow for job specific applications versus our current pooling of application system at the school level, which will hope to make that retention and interviewing of teachers a whole lot easier. This system that we're working on that we're implementing actually will help not just the recruitment but also expedite, I think, the process in expediting that process in moving the hiring forward. And so quick recruitment and hiring, I think, is really important for us. And so that's what we're hoping that this system will do.
You mentioned earlier that student enrollment has increased as compared to last year. I'm wondering if you know how many students have not returned to school thanks to COVID, if we can figure out how many kids dropped out and left the system during the pandemic and in the time that's followed.
I think, when we look at the number of students who have left the system, when I think about the different kinds of data, our graduation rate actually has increased, so that we know that students are completing school. For the 2021 school year, the percentage of dropouts was actually flat from last year, from the year prior, at just under about 11% of our students. That was down from about 14% 5 years prior to that. When students do leave our system, whether through exits or whether through withdrawals, the top reason that we found for student withdrawal in 2020 to 2021, that school year, was that our students moved to another state. That was about 58% of all of our students who exited. Other reasons for the exits included private, students transitioning to private school, about 14%, and homeschool, about 5%. Our homeschool numbers, students that transferred to homeschool programs, was about 5% of our exits. That number was up from pre-pandemic numbers. So when we talk about dropout, we're looking at our students who are leaving, but our graduation numbers are up. But definitely we have students who have left the DOE for a number of various reasons.
We're almost out of time, but I quickly want to just get to a broad topic, so hopefully we can hold this in here. But that's the legislative session and the budget that is being crafted. Of course, the Department of Education has a lot of needs moving forward. What would you say is the top priority for the department funding-wise that you'll be asking the legislature for support in and lobbying for during this next legislative session?
Well, definitely we always look forward to working together with our legislators. They have always, been very supportive of public education, and the many areas that the department has needs in, all focus on our students and providing them with the kinds of support that they need. As I shared, looking at the vulnerable students, students who are EL, second language, that come from perhaps economically disadvantaged areas, that we can support them. Our middle school definitely is an important area that we're looking to build out on. And over the journey of our students, we're also continuing to look at the importance that our students are able to transition once they graduate through our system, effectively and smoothly, that transition into the workforce or into higher education and into the workforce, and the kinds of opportunities that we're able to provide for our students, so that when they graduate, they can find jobs in Hawaii, living wage jobs, and stay home and thrive. And in that process, in focusing on workforce and getting all of our students ready for that, we contribute to, I think, our graduates being effective workers, building and really supporting the economy in Hawaii, and that then goes back, and we're able to support a strong public education system. So those areas, that big area is really important, I think, for us as we work together with our partners. Other specific areas, if we look at, definitely relate to food, bus, electricity costs, those have increased, utilities. So to be able to sustain operations as well as to support students in learning, and then continue to work with our partners to prepare our students to be ready to enter the workforce, to be able to stay in Hawaii, thrive, and earn a living wage, I think is really important. And I want to thank, again, our legislators for their support, because they're definitely a crucial partner in ensuring that our students have a really quality educational experience.
Ryan did mention that we're almost out of time, but I do want to ask you, we talked a lot about learning loss and making up for those areas of weakness. I'm interested to know, how long do you think it will take our students on the social emotional part and also on the academics to really overcome the losses that we sustained during the pandemic? How do you set realistic expectations? Because when people look at the test scores, or they see the behavioral issues that we've talked about, we just want to make sure that everyone has realistic expectations for how long this takes really to recover.
Yes, when we consult with national experts, nationally, I think they're saying between 3 to 5 years. I think is a general recovery as a result of the pandemic. Definitely in Hawaii, we continue to work really hard. Our teachers and our school employees, counselors, and everyone, together with our families and our stakeholders, working together, we're going to do our best to expedite that as quickly as possible. But the national experts are saying between 3 to 5 years. I think it's really important. One of the things we're talking about in the department is called Ne'epapa, and one of our themes. And that's about everyone pulling together in unison and moving forward in a common direction. And, that Ne'epapa concept is not just for the department as we're doing that, but also, we want to continue to engage the many stakeholders that we have in partnering with us, because we can't do it alone. It's other agencies, our legislators, philanthropy, industry, everyone working in Hawaii, and the media. Thank you very much, to move forward and to help support our kids and our students and our kids, because that's what public education is all about. And so I think it's a really exciting time, right now. Challenging, but exciting, because we're making the gains, and we're going to continue to do that. There's definitely a lot of work to do as we move forward, but I think we're all up to the challenge. So that's a really exciting thing.
All right, State Superintendent Keith Hayashi, thanks so much for joining us here on this Friday before Christmas. We appreciate the time and wish you and your family all the best this holiday season. Aloha.
Aloha. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great to hear from him. Interesting to hear the data that he shared with us, talking about, fourth grade and eighth grade scores, and saying that they are holding steady, other than the area of math, that the reading scores for the eighth graders have held steady, and that the fourth graders have held steady both in math and reading, but also acknowledging that there have been a lot of setbacks, particularly in the social and emotional abilities of these students to integrate back into the classroom. He says it's getting better. He heard most of that during the first part of these kids going back to school, and that things are kind of catching up. But you heard there at the end, 3 to 5 years, Ryan, that we need to set our expectations for what we see from the DOE.
Yeah, and it seemed to be a theme as he discussed today, as the Department of Education recognizes some of those losses because of the pandemic, and continue to stress the importance of that in-person social interaction, not only for being able for students to learn, but that other component of students being able to relate with one another on the social aspect of that. We also got clarity about that 2 administrative days that some teachers were wondering if they would fall into that category. He answered the question right off the top, saying that because teachers and others who work in a school facility already have that time off during winter break, they unfortunately will not be eligible or will not receive 2 additional comp days, if you will, as other state employees are actually celebrating right now and enjoying right now, probably.
That's right. He also talked about some of the priorities with the legislature and going to them to work in partnership to get funding, of course, for the DOE. One of the areas of weakness that the DOE is experiencing now is vacancies, and saying that there are over 700 vacancies for teacher, nearly 50 in special education. They're trying to figure out ways to update their website and make the hiring process a little easier. Just basic things like making sure that people who are applying via their cell phone can actually get through the website, and changing some of the protocols there so that those people can be looked at and hired in a quick way. He's stressing, of course, the positive, as he tends to do. He's a very glass half full kind of guy, saying that, look, we have 94% of our vacancies filled. Only 6%, in his estimation, are vacant at this point. That's still a lot of teacher vacancies, though, Ryan, and something that we'd like to see, that the state would like to see addressed.
Yeah, no doubt. As he said, he's going to be working with lawmakers, and two important lawmakers that are going to be on our next show. We're actually going to be taking Monday off, but on our next show on Wednesday at 10:30, we'll be speaking with Senate President Ron Kochi, as well as House Speaker Scott Saiki, about some of the priorities of both their houses as they enter this next legislative session, as well as the new dynamics working with their former colleagues, both Lieutenant Governor Luke and Governor Green, now assuming that administrative role on the fifth floor, and some of the priorities for the Democratic and Majority Party heading into this legislative session. There are a number of key issues that will likely have to be discussed, and be interesting to note what they believe will be the top priority for both of them as they head into this legislative session. So we look forward to that conversation. We wish all of you a very Merry Christmas, and we hope to see you right back here on Wednesday. Aloha.
Aloha.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.